1980s, I was a freelance computer programmer, and I worked at various short jobs in New York State and New Jersey and Connecticut, but most of my contract work was right on Wall Street itself. Yeah, the Wall Street, the belly of the beast, the center of the great whirlpool sucking the USA down into the deep blue sea of our second Civil War. Okay, here we go. Every day I'd take the PATH train from Jersey City to the World Trade Center and the Twin Towers. Remember, this was before the dancing rabbis and all that bullshit. Then I walked south on Broadway till I got to Wall Street, where I hung a left and walked a couple of blocks to the bank where I was working. In the lobby, I had to show a pass to get past the security guy to get to the elevators. Then I went up several stories to the floor I was working on. Then I entered a large room that had about 50 desks and a phone and a computer terminal on each desk. This was a sort of overflow room normally used to house transient computer whackers like myself. Normally, I was the only one there, which suited me just fine. However, one day, there were about a dozen guys there. They were all wearing suits, but they definitely weren't programmers like me. They were all just sitting there doing nothing, and when I entered, they all looked at me but said nothing. Nothing. I said nothing because I long since learned that in New York it's always a good idea to keep your big fat fucking mouth shut, hillbilly. Yeah. So I sat down behind a desk at the far end of the room and switched on a computer terminal and logged in and pretended to be working just like usual and think where I was going to smoke pot on my lunch break. But I was nervous about these dudes. Their suits didn't look like my immaculate Brooks Brothers dark blue junior banker suit. I had long since learned that when you work for New York banks, you can burn the fucking places down, but don't ever violate their official dress code. But these guys were making me nervous, really nervous. They definitely were not programmers because they all had New York accents straight out of the movie Goodfellas, and their suits looked like crap chosen at random from a bargain bin in a Goodwill store. I couldn't figure it out. My first guess was that they were a delegation of small businessmen waiting for some meeting with the bankers. Hey, this is New York, that can happen. They made small talk amongst themselves about the Yankees and the Mets. Every 15 minutes or so, a phone would ring on the desk of the guy who appeared to be in charge. He would answer, scribble some notes on a piece of paper, and hang up the phone. Then he would sound off a couple of names and an address like Murphy and Bonanno, 45789 Wall Street, 5th floor, Mr. Goldfinger, room 17, get going. Then a couple of guys would exit the room and return maybe an hour later. This went all morning, and I was at a loss to figure out what these guys were and what they were up to. Oddly, they always kept their jackets on, and while observing them out of the corners of my eyes, I noticed that they all had a slight but discernible bulge on the left side of their jacket. My, I wonder what that could be. When one bent over to retrieve a pack of cigarettes, I saw an unmistakable shoulder holster with a gat in it. Oh shit! Bark, bark, bark! What the fuck were a dozen sketchy guys with New York accents and cheap suits and gats doing at a respectable Wall Street bank? I thought it must be some sort of Ocean's 11 style heist. After a few days, I got to know some, and it turned out that they were all New York City police detectives. For you hillbillies out there, in New York, police detectives are known as princes of the city, unquote, and not without good reason. Their job was escorting bankers who were transporting bearer bonds between banks in the Wall Street area. The address was where they met the banker with the bonds. Okay, hillbillies, I'm going to explain what a bearer bond is. Conventional bonds are sold, usually by a corporation with the cooperation of an issuing bank, and the legal buyer is recorded, and only the recorded owner can cash it in at its maturity date. Bearer bonds, on the other hand, are payable to, quote, the bearer, unquote, on the maturity date, and supposedly not even an ID is required to cash it in. Supposedly any hobo finding one on the street can walk into the issuing bank and cash it in and get all the money without even presenting an ID. Ha ha ha! Actually, I bet the bank knows perfectly well who they're paying out to. In any case, they are guarded just like cash, these bearer bonds, when being transported. But since they are usually deals between Wall Street banks and biggie New York corporations, they usually just circulate around on Wall Street from one bank vault to another. So why does anyone issue these secretive bearer bonds? Ha ha! Well, it's all tax evasion, and everybody knows it. It's common knowledge. If a corporation needs to borrow money, but doesn't want to pay the going interest rate, say 5%, they can issue a bearer bond on which they can pay a lower rate, say 3%. The party who buys this bond gets less interest money, but since there is no record of him ever owning the bond or getting anything for it, he simply doesn't report the interest earned and is thus taxed $0. All this is 100% legal, of course, because tax is always due on interest earned. Every bearer bond ever issued was issued to avoid taxes and never for any other purpose. It's all an open secret, or at least it was back in my Wall Street days. Paradoxically, it was never illegal to issue bearer bonds. It was never illegal to buy bearer bonds. It was never illegal to possess bearer bonds. And it was never illegal to transport bearer bonds. It was never illegal to sell bearer bonds. And it was never illegal for cops to protect these activities, but they did. It was only illegal not to report the interest to the IRS. Ha ha ha! That really scared the shit out of them, huh, boys and girls? What bearer bonds were actually used for was tax evasion by huge and connected banks and huge corporations and wealthy individuals. The observed fact that they were being shuttled around the Wall Street area was obvious and undeniable proof that it was one huge palsy-walsy scam to stiff the IRS by people like the Skull and Bones boys and the Dancing Rabbis. For every law in America, there is always a loophole for the chosen rich to avoid it. Turn over a rock in America, any rock, and the same vermin are always there. My fellow peasants, we face a future with two regrettable, but nevertheless distinct destinations. One where we save the empire but lose millions of people, and the other where we break up the empire but save the people. Okay, amigos, think on that for a while, and please remember to support your local elected county sheriff. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.